Hi there, Glocal citizens. Welcome back to the podcast that inspires a borderless mindset around manifesting a new world. I am your host, Florence Adu, coming to you from the lovely neighborhood of Osu. I am in a hideaway. I would have never known this place except for my guest knows it and is friendly with the owner. And I have to say, it's quite lovely because I'm looking up at a building that's not too old, but it's a lovely blue and it's framed by bougainvillea of different colors. And it's just kind of, it feels, I don't want to say nostalgic, but it feels like we're not necessarily in 2026. And so I like that about this. So my guest, we met 2 years ago on a tour, and the tour was around another local citizen, James Barnard, when the installation was going on around Jamestown for the James Banner at 95 celebration. So we met on the tour, very interesting background. And I said, look, I have to invite you on the podcast. And it so happens he's back in Accra and we get to do this live and in person. So I love that. So let me get to his bio and we'll get to the conversation. He is a legal professional, filmmaker, and community engagement specialist. He began his career as a legal advocate for asylum seekers and refugees, working at a detention center in Cambridgeshire with the UK's largest nonprofit immigration law firm. Alongside his human rights work, he pursued his passion for filmmaking, training at the New York Film Academy, and going on to make his first feature film, Drawn. In 2008, he shifted into dispute resolution and made his second feature film in Queensland. And today, he works in community and stakeholder engagement, building bridges between public sector organizations and marginalized communities while continuing to explore storytelling as a tool for social impact. Nana Asomani-Poku, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here. I know we didn't make it happen 2 years ago, but it did happen in the end.
Yeah.
So it's very, very exciting to be here. Thank you for having me. And I'm glad that, because you fly to Kenya on Wednesday, don't you? Yeah. So I'm excited because I'm here till Friday. So I'm excited we've been able to fit this time slot. Thanks for making time for me.
And again, happy birthday to you.
Thank you. 15 again.
Yes, there you go.
Stop counting at 18 now, really. But yeah.
It's so funny because the energy of Aquarians, I don't know if you're into astrology, but I have a number of friends whose birthdays are started this last week and into this week. And so it's nice to, have kindred spirits. So the Aquarians are my polar opposite as a Leo. So that's the other thing. So yeah, I get along so well with some of my very close friends are Aquarians.
I've always been curious about the traits of Aquarians. I mean, how would you summarize us, or how would you?
Oh, interesting. I've never done a deep dive into like the specific traits, but my friends who are Aquarians are typically generous of time and of spirit. Yeah. They're driven and focused. Yeah. Aquarian, I think, is a water sign, but they have a lot of air, so there's the lightness in that as well. So yeah.
I'll take that. I love that. I love that.
There you go. So let's get started. Let's jump right in. Where are you from? Where are you local? And what is your craft?
Wow. Okay. It's interesting. That question, where are you from, sends me into a little bit of a panic because I think I'll say I'm truly a global citizen. Yes. So I was born in the UK. Well, I was born in a place called Leytonstone in East London. And we say it's within the sound of the Bow Bells. The Bow Bells is a very symbolic kind of East London landmark. That's where a market is. So within the sounds of the Bow Bells. I was brought back to Ghana by my parents at a very early age. So I stayed here till I was 12. And then I moved to the UK when I was 12. I went to boarding school in the UK. And also I lived in between Switzerland and the UK. So I stayed in Europe for another maybe 18 years. And then about 18 years ago, I migrated to Australia in search of bluer skies, sunshine. People in Australia often say, why did you move to Australia? And I say, common sense. I lived in the UK where it's all grey. I don't know whether you've been, but it's all grey. Australia is just so sunnier, so much sunnier. Yeah. So that's why I've also lived in America a little bit. So the answer to your question is, I would call myself a Ghanaian, British, Australian, with a green card.
Oh, I
Yes,
love
yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah,
love
yeah.
it.
So, yeah, yeah,
Wow.
it's pretty, yeah, yeah, yeah. So,
So you have a Ghanaian passport.
yes,
You have a British
yeah,
passport. What about Australia?
of course, yes.
Wow, so you're a proper Australian citizen.
I'm a Yeah, yeah,
Wow.
yeah. And I have a green card. I actually tried to live in America. My mom lives in America, in between Boston and here. So I actually lived and worked in America for a bit and decided that my heart is in Australia. I
Yeah,
love
that wasn't the
Australia.
blue sky you were
Yes,
looking
it
for.
wasn't. It wasn't. So my heart is in Australia, but Ghana is certainly in my blood. You know, I am Ghanaian, and it's just so good to be back, to be with my people. And it's interesting as well. I mean, because of this podcast, I've been asked where I'm from. But when you're here, I never get asked where I'm from because I guess I'm with my people
Yeah,
and I love that.
exactly,
Yeah, yeah,
exactly,
yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
And people just speak tree to you, I'm sure.
Exactly, exactly. Which I love.
Exactly.
I love. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So
yeah.
do you speak tree?
Yes, very fluently. Yeah,
Wow. Yeah.
yeah.
Well, you grew up here, so
Well, I
yeah.
did,
Well,
but
until 12. So
yes. But you know the interesting thing, actually, when I grew up here, I wasn't that fluent in Tree because, yeah, yeah, because I guess I grew up in a very, very middle upper class household.
so school was English,
Yes.
everything. Yeah.
It was only when I moved to London that actually my mom, you know, hung out with a lot of Ghanaians. So as a result of that, my
You start
tree,
speaking in the house.
yeah, 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 my tree
Yeah.
improved. It's yeah, the irony of it all.
I
But
love
yeah.
that. Yeah, nice, nice, nice. So tell us about your local a little bit more.
It's interesting. I live in Australia. I call Australia home. And I'm very nomadic. Growing up, my mum was nomadic, so we moved a lot. And my dad actually worked for the United Nations. So as a result of that, you know, I've lived in various continents. In Australia, I've lived everywhere. I've lived in Adelaide, in Perth, in Melbourne, and in Brisbane. Last month, I moved from Perth back to Melbourne. So I lived in Melbourne for 6 years.
So all coastal though.
All coastal, yes, yes, yes. So I'm currently in Melbourne. I've been in Melbourne for over a month now. And actually, I think I found my city. I think I found my
love it.
place. Yeah, yeah. You know, I've been moving and moving and moving, but I love Melbourne. I love Melbourne. You know, I was a little bit hesitant to move there in the first place because of the weather, but now I'm.
Now, what about the weather?
Oh,
Because it
okay.
rains there.
It rains. Well, okay. Melbourne, we joke that it has 4 seasons in a day. So literally, you know, you could wake up and it's sunny, then it will rain, then it will hail, then it will be, I don't know, it'll be winter in the next minute. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Wow.
And it really, people joke about it, but it is really real. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. If you want culture, you know, if you're an artist, yeah, then Melbourne in Australia is the place to be. It's edgy. It's got grit. It's got soul. It's got a vibrancy. It's where it's at.
Yeah.
Certainly where it's at.
Nice,
Yeah, yeah,
nice,
yeah.
nice. Forget Sydney. Go
Yeah.
to Melbourne. Well, I've heard Sydney is just so touristy. So it's
It is. Well, look, there's a Sydney-Melbourne rivalry. So it's almost like the French-English rivalry, or I guess Ghanaian-Nigerian rivalry. It might be, yeah. So there's a Sydney-Melbourne rivalry. So there's an argument of which is the best city. Without a doubt, Melbourne.
okay.
You know? Yep. I'm Team Melbourne. Yeah.
So that's going to be my Australia stop. I'll
yeah,
go there.
please,
Okay.
please. That would be the place. Yeah, the
Yeah.
only place to visit, really.
Okay,
Yeah.
lovely, lovely, lovely. So you found yourself in Australia, but I kind of want to know why the where. You said bluer skies, but I feel like there's a deeper question and it may have to do with career and all of those things. So why the where? How did you come to be living, working, and playing in Australia in general?
A few factors to it. When I was younger, I used to frequent Australia.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. My grandmother lived in Australia.
Really?
Yeah. My uncle and aunt also lived in Australia. So the majority of the family.
So these were Ghanaians migrating to Australia.
Yes. It's actually interesting because the first person to go to Australia was my uncle. My uncle Katie, he's actually in Ghana at the moment. He lives in between Ghana and Australia now. He moved there because his wife's father was an ambassador.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah.
So diplomacy.
Exactly.
was one way.
Yeah. And then once he moved there, you know, my aunt joined. And so I used to frequent there. My grandmother then moved there after my grandfather passed. Yeah. So I used to frequent there when I was younger. And I always just thought, I gave myself till 30. And I thought at 30, I might just move there. I don't know why. Something when I was younger told me that at 30, yeah.
That's your place.
Yeah, it was my place. And I lived in England and I think I just needed a change. The job I did was quite challenging. And I just wanted, literally, I was sick and tired of just the grayness. But I also wanted a different attitude. I wanted a shift in attitude. I think England is a beautiful place. I'll be careful what I say, but I think with dull weather, people can be a little bit dark. People can be dark. And it's not their fault, but it's, you know.
The sun makes a difference.
It does make a difference, yeah. So I wanted to do that. And I also just wanted to be reunited with most of the family. My mom moved to America.
Sure.
Yeah, and I was alone in England.
And now, so in the U.S., is she on the East Coast, West Coast? I mean, so was she always there? Because you mentioned Boston.
Yeah.
So is that where you also moved?
Yes, yes. My mom's story is interesting. She lived in England with me, and one day she went to visit her cousin in Canada, and she told me that, when she was younger, she dated this guy called Prince. She said, "I wonder what he's doing. It'd be good to catch up with him again." So she goes to Canada, and she mentions him to her cousin, and the cousin goes, "I know him. He's living in Boston." So she calls a friend who has Prince's number, and 30 years later, they reconnect. And they get married.
Wow.
30 years later after dating, yeah.
Wow.
Isn't that a beautiful story?
That is.
It is, yeah.
They're still together.
And they're still together.
I
Yes,
love
yeah.
that.
Yeah, so she was in England and she moved to America to join him.
Okay, got it. Got it. Nice. Okay, so that's how you got to Australia. And so you already had a connection. So that's kind of, you had a softer landing than maybe someone who went there cold.
Yeah.
And so I want to talk a little bit more about the career choice or journey that you engaged in. So you became a lawyer, which is very much like a Ghanaian family would expect.
Yes, exactly.
But the law you practiced was not-for-profit law.
Yeah.
And so it sounds like impact is something that has always been in the fore of the way you look at the world and want to do things. So tell us about how and why and what that work was like and how it has transitioned over your career.
You're very, very right. Impact is what I'm about. I've actually never really worked for a profit-making organization in my life. All the jobs I've done have been with government organizations or with not-for-profit. The way I actually got into, immigration law, working with refugees and asylum seekers, was that when I was 12, my uncle who worked for the UN adopted me, and he worked for the UNHCR. So, I came to boarding school in England, but spent a lot of time in Switzerland, New York, wherever he was living. So I think I grew up around very socially conscious people.
Yeah.
And he was a formidable man. I mean, in 1981, he headed the team that won the Nobel Peace Prize for the UNHCR. And he was only 31. So just someone who was very, very passionate about what he did and had a strong belief in what he did. He and his friends would sit around and listen to John Lennon's Imagine, but they listened to it with that aspiration to make the world like that. So that was the kind of influence that shaped me. So when it came to practicing law, I guess it was a no-brainer. I was not going to work for a commercial company to make money for someone. I wanted to assist people. And I guess because, I grew up in a household where my father cared for refugees and asylum seekers. That was his job. It was just, sometimes you just follow in your parents' footsteps.
In either way, right? So usually we see them like in business, but this is also.
Exactly, yeah. And I think as a kid, I mean, like you said, African families, it's, you're an accountant, a lawyer, a doctor, a failure. Those options really. And with regards to that, my biological father, who I was a bit estranged from, is a long story, but we reunited actually. When I met you, I was here for his 70th birthday. Yeah. He was a lawyer. So I think in my head as well, growing up, I just thought that's what I was going to do. Yeah. So, that was really my passion, and I really wanted to assist people, and human rights law was something which I was passionate about. Yeah.
So I want to ask you, because I'm kind of assuming because of how the violence has been wrapped into it in the US right now in terms of weaponizing the idea of like, we want, this whole xenophobic, no one can be here kind of thing. What do you see as the future of, migration for people? Because it's more than just immigration. Like a lot of why people move is migration, sure, but it's migration. So what are kind of your thoughts when you think about what's going on in the US and what has been going on with African migrants going to Europe? It's harder to get to Australia, but I'm curious.
I was afraid you would ask me this question. I was really trying to stay away from politics. I'll tell you what, I'm very concerned. And I tell you something, Florence, I have not watched the news in 2 months.
I love it.
Yeah, I've watched it twice, and both days I watched it, I could not sleep. The level of anxiety. I think sometimes it's actually just good for your mental health to take a fast from the news. But the times I've watched the news has been horrifying to see what is happening. I mean, we're sitting there and we're watching the free world slowly, erode, into a place where people's human rights are not being taken into account. Countries can no longer have sovereignty, with regards to what's happening in Venezuela. I did not think I'll be going there. I can't believe you got us there. And also with the deportation of Americans, I hear, he wants to unnaturalize Americans. It's just concerning. It's concerning. I guess I don't want to go too much into politics in terms of this discussion. But what I will say is that I'm very, very concerned. But what I've been more concerned and surprised about as well has been the silence of other leaders around the world. Silence makes one complicit. It really does. And I think, careful what I say again, but I feel because of the power which America wields over the world, other leaders are afraid to perhaps condemn some of the actions which have happened. And it's a concern for me. It's a concern. It's just a concern. Yeah.
Totally understood.
Okay.
So let's flip the corner
Okay.
a little bit and talk a little bit more creatively, right? So you did in your U.S. experience go to film school.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So tell us how did a lawyer who's working with immigration law end up in film school and making 2 feature films, not just 1 but 2?
Yeah. I think storytelling was just in my blood. Yeah. When I grew up in Ghana, what we basically had classes, but in between classes, let's just say a teacher wasn't there or we just needed space to be filled, they would come and tell you, can someone come to the front of class and tell a story?
Oh, I love it.
Yeah. So storytelling was actually part of the curriculum when I was growing up in Ghana. I don't know whether it's done anymore, but you'd stand in front of the class and you would it was quite hilarious. You'd stand in front of the class and go once upon a time, and everyone would go time, and then you'd tell your story. And we told many stories. It could be a book you've read, which you'd recount. And I don't know whether you know Kwekwa Nancy, the Nancy stories. So we would tell a lot of the Nancy stories. So growing up, I found out I had a talent for doing that.
Oh,
yeah. So
people say we want Nana.
Yeah, exactly. So I would go there and I could really tell a story. And my mom can tell a great story, actually. She's a very, very good story. So I think for me, it didn't really matter what I was doing, but storytelling was very, very important. Yeah. And I guess also that growing up as a kid, I knew I was different. I mean, growing up in Ghana, I had a wild imagination. And I remember every time I went to bed, I actually would stay up and just imagine scenarios. It was a very, very bizarre thing to say. But yeah, I sort of wasn't really here with the rest of the world.
And so did your dreams, were they vivid? So if you're more sweet, I had wonderful dreams. I still do.
Yeah, you do?
And so
I would say they're vivid, but I've written stories or I've been inspired by dreams. Yes. It's funny, actually. I'm working on a piece currently, and it's about coercive control, really. But I had this, and it sounds very macabre, but I had this recurring dream that I had to keep hiding a body. I don't know why. Don't ask me why. And it was a very, very stressful experience, right? But actually, based on that, I started to write a script actually about a scenario. And it was also a little bit, I'm not going to go into too much details about it, but it was also based on certain things. So I have a friend who's a lawyer, and she works for, I guess, what we call it Centrelink back in Australia, but it's welfare. So people who are unemployed, it's unemployment benefits. So she's a lawyer who deals with that and assists people with that for a non-government organization. And she told me a story about a woman who was in a very, very abusive relationship. And, she flipped and killed her husband. And then she hid the body. Yes. And so eventually when they got to her, apart from being charged with murder, because, in Australia or in the Western world, everything is down to the book. She also had to face a second trial for fraud for fraud, basically, because she kept going to, she kept claiming his benefits. Yeah. So those two things sort of inspired me to work on this piece about, and it's about coercive control. And it looks at the various sides and various perspectives, because it's not a black or white story either. Yeah. So yeah, talking about dreams, yeah, often sometimes recurring dreams sort of are the basis to, yeah.
The story needs to get out.
Exactly.
Okay, so tell us about Drawn. So that's one story.
Yes.
First.
My first film, okay. First film, Drawn, is actually a very, very interesting story behind that. I call it, it was actually the best therapy I ever did. It was. I grew up estranged from my biological father because I was adopted later on when I was 12. So we're estranged. And I guess around the age of 19, when I went to uni, I was in a boarding school. And in a boarding school, a lot of people had very dysfunctional families in the school I went to. In the first week of school, I remember my dorm mate being called home because his father had run away to Bermuda with the secretary. And, so it was a very, very dysfunctional. So it was normal. Totally. So fast forward, I am 18 and I go to uni. And, I just went to uni. And what I realized was that everyone seemed to have a real family unit. Like, I just turned up at uni and everyone was dropped off by their family. And then the more I hang out with people, I found that people had really, really tight, close family units. And I think it triggered something because I didn't grow up with my biological father. So I guess I explored issues, abandonment, various things. And I had to do a lot of work to actually come to peace with our relationship. It became a beautiful relationship later, don't get me wrong, but it was quite a difficult time in my late teens and my 20s, trying to understand various aspects of that relationship and that abandonment. And as a result of that, Drawn came about. And it was really about what happens when you're angry with someone who does not exist in your life. What do you do with that anger? And it was basically a story about a character's healing journey. It was a redemptive story about someone who had to basically let go of a painful past to embrace a more brighter, beautiful future. And that was really essentially what Drawn was about. But what Drawn did for me was that I had to do a lot of research and a lot of reading to explore the father-son dynamic for that film. And what it did for me is that it made me come to terms and made me make peace with my father. So really, sometimes art can be very, very healing for artists. Absolutely. Yeah, often, we do it for other people, but often we do it for ourselves. Right. And that is what Drawn did for me. It gave me that opportunity to make peace and heal with my biological father.
I think writing, so journal writing, poetry, all those things have been historically just how people heal. Visual artists will do it through materials and through different paints. So it makes sense. And it's wonderful that you found that medium as a way of expression. Yeah. And so I want to go into that African father dynamic, because it's something that I think is widespread. I think that, my parents divorced. I did grow up with my father, but when your parents divorce, it is also that same kind of estrangement that can happen, particularly because of the way that African fathers have been placed in wherever country, maybe Ghana, wherever, but been placed in the family unit in many ways based on their upbringing. So I call my father's experience like an experience of colonialism, because he came from the farm, lived with an uncle in town, and that uncle basically houseboyed him. So it was very strict. So he didn't have the nurturing, didn't have the growth to be a father. That's fine, but he knew that he needs to be a father. And so just recognizing how to nurture a child because you were not nurtured, because you were in a system that was this punitive, forceful, do this, do that, do that. I think that is something that I don't know if we speak enough about as Africans, is the dynamic of how it impacts child rearing, basically.
Look, I agree. Yeah, it was just very, very bizarre, reflecting on my relationship. It was never really spoken about. I basically, again, the complexity of my life. But, when my parents were no longer together, I grew up with my grandparents for a bit. Mm-hmm. And then I went to live with an aunt and an uncle who had two sons. And they felt, well, at least I'll be in a family unit, you know? And so that's what happened. And then my mom went off to Nigeria to, to teach in the northern Nigeria in a place called Sokoto. So I was going out with my cousins basically, and my mom returned from Nigeria. And the first time I met my dad, I was actually I remember very vividly. I was actually in the corridor. I was on a rocking horse. You know those old-fashioned rocking horses? And I was wearing blue pajamas. A man came into the house, and the maid went to call my mom, and they had a chat. And then they said, "Nana, come over here." And my mom said, "Who's this? And do you know who this man is?" And I said, "Well,
How would I?
How would I know?" And they said it's your father. And I remember that moment, us just looking at each other. It was just a father and son. I was maybe 6 years old, and just us staring at each other. And he said, "How you doing? Have you been good for your mom? I'll come and pick you up on Thursday." But that moment was quite a pivotal moment. Now, because when I worked in dispute resolution, I did a lot of family law dispute resolution. And in hindsight, for me to have met my father for the first time at 6 years old, if I was living in Australia, for example, there would have been psychologists involved.
Right, exactly. There would have been a process to familiarize with.
Yes,
Yeah.
a very safe environment would have been created. Yeah. And that isn't really thought about. I'm not pointing fingers at anyone. It's just how it is. But I guess we don't have that luxury in Africa, do we really? Well, back in my day,
Well,
I guess.
I think it's more so we don't have that consciousness.
Yes.
Partially because our family units have been so different. So to the extent that, someone was a journeywoman or journeyman, they may have gone away, and this could have been very natural, right?
Yes.
They growing up with your grandparents, parents gone, and come in. And so I think it's just, oh, that's who father is. Okay, carry on, But then when you move through stages of life, and you're kind of in comparison, because that's what happens, right? So my friends who have young children, I have some friends who are women who are single mothers by choice.
Yeah.
And at some point, the child starts to ask, "Where's daddy?"
Yeah.
And so the question is, and then they see other people with dads. And so the question is whether or not you ask, or if that mattered to you because you had that same kind of unit already between your grandparents as a unit.
Yeah.
So.
The great question, actually. I think I asked, but it wasn't, I have a vague memory of it, but I didn't feel it was encouraged for me to explore that question, if you know what I mean. I think it was sort of carpet, lift, sweep, quickly let it down.
Yeah. That's...
And I think I may have once stumbled across a photograph of my mom with my dad in it. Yeah, and I didn't really know whether it was him, but yeah, it was an interesting dynamic.
Yeah. So as a creative myself, I want to understand a little bit more about your process for actually getting to the point of having a feature film produced.
Yeah. Okay.
So tell us about that journey. So you've had this story in your mind, and then from story to, let's go watch Nana's film.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, I talked a bit about the genesis of that story.
Yeah.
It's such a blur because, when you write it, but I remember being 18 years old, and I remember I had a big crush on a girl called Natalie Wayne. Hi, Natalie. I don't know where on earth you are, but I imagine I was walking around London at 18, and I thought, what would it be like to just spend 24 hours on a date with Natalie? Really?
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
yeah. And this story sort of that was also sort of an inspiration for the film Drawn, because it's about two lost souls who find themselves, and they spend a limited amount of time, but within that time they help themselves heal. And the main character Mike basically has this trauma with a father who is no longer who's absent. Yeah, and so that was what happened. And I guess I started to write, and I think the first draft of that script was, I'd hide the first draft if someone asked, I'd be like, no. But I think what I found was that it was just that story I kept building on, and just observing things, or thinking, that would be an interesting observation, and also just then begin to understand how story works, the structure of story.
Okay.
When I was in film school, the classes I did, and understood things such as conflict, how we can really harness that and leverage off that to write a good script. A lot of it was just about doing the research and just being bold and not being afraid to do it. I think to be a creative, and especially to make a film, is a very audacious thing. Being young and naive helps. Being young and naive really, really helps. So I think it was just something I just did. Because my mom just kept saying, focus on your law career, join the UN like your dad. But I just really wanted to work on that. So yeah, so that was it. In terms of process, well, it was a gentle process. It was a 8-year process to actually to make that film.
Got it.
But it was also lots of moving parts. So everyone I met, I told I wanted to be a filmmaker in case I met someone who could assist me, and did lots of courses, and then ended up making that bold move to go to New York and study film, and came back and I just did it. I threw every cent, every dime.
Bootstrapped it, okay.
Yeah, I had, and just I called in every favor I could call, and made it.
So with that experience, you decided to do it again.
Yes.
Yeah. How was that different? Because were both films made in Australia?
No, okay, the first film was made in London. I guess what was different about the Australian film was actually, the film I made in Australia was a little bit traumatic, truth be told. I went on hiatus after that, actually. But what was different was that, firstly, the film I made in Australia, I didn't write it. It was a film written by someone I was later introduced to, one of my main actors. And it was an Australian comedy. So it's very, very specific to Australia. And you really have to be Australian and really understand a lot of things about Australia. I went on the project just to help them because I'd made a feature film and things didn't work out with the director and I was sort of left holding the baby. And so that was actually quite a challenging film to work on, there was very, very little unity. And creatives always, bat heads or whatever, but this was a whole new level. And as well as being a director and a producer, I was also a mediator on that film set. Directors, often mediators in a way, but I ended up being a mediator on that film set. So there were many challenges to it. I think what I learned from that film, as opposed to Drum, was that firstly, you just have to do something which is authentic to you. Right? I didn't feel that film was authentic to who I am. And, to just listen to that inner voice, something about me said, this is not the project for me. But I did it. It was an okay project. It didn't turn out the way I'd hoped it would take on. And after that, I decided I was going to take a bit of a break from film.
Sure.
Sure. Because there was a lot to it. And I'm now actually slightly healed and I'm feeling courageous enough to come back to film. Yeah.
Okay, good. So speaking about something that's so very specific, very Australian, I want to ask you about local speak. So this is a word or a phrase or a saying that is a meaningful part of your local experience and why or how you value it as local speak.
I like just the simple word welcome.
Oh, okay.
I love the simple word welcome. And I love it because both in Australia and here, here they say akwaba. Yeah. And I love it because I think that in terms of, I worked with refugees and asylum seekers. There was this story I heard about a lady who was saying that, when she came on board and she did get refugee status, she talked about just walking the streets. And one day someone looked at her and smiled and said, hi. And she just burst out crying, right? And I feel that really what we don't do much about, especially when it comes to refugees and asylum seekers, is make them feel welcome. Mm-hmm. It is, especially in England, it's a real political hot potato. But I love the idea of telling someone it's okay, come in. And basically when in Australia with our First Nations people, who, people know them as Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, they have something called Welcome to Country. So basically, Welcome to Country in Australia is something which only elders who are actually from a place where, First Nations people can do. But it's something where if someone is coming, if you were coming over to, and you were a dignitary, for example, they'll do that and they'll do a smoking ceremony. And it's just the idea that someone says, it's okay, come in. It's okay, you can be a part of us. And just seeing that word makes me happy. And actually, I remember with my last job in engagement, I actually worked for the Electoral Commission in Western Australia. And I did a project for culturally and linguistic diverse people where we had ambassadors. So basically what we did was we took people who were prominent within certain communities and basically we got them in and gave them training so that they could educate their community about voting. And the first thing I did in that training was talk to them about my experience being from a culturally linguistic diverse place. And I taught them the word kwaba. And my colleagues currently, in a new job I'm doing in Melbourne, I have a colleague who's actually got that word in her phone. And every time she messages me, it's inappropriate, but she goes, akwaba. So there's just something about that with welcome, in actually any language, really, which I love. And especially working with refugees and asylum seekers. Yeah, I love it when communities, I did see communities back in England who would say, Syrian refugees are welcome here. Welcome to this community. Yeah, I love that. Yeah.
I love that you said that because that is the essence of a borderless mindset, right? It's that all land is for all earthlings.
Beautiful. Earthlings, I
So,
love
so
that.
let us, yeah, or humans or what have you,
Yeah.
so that we understand that there's no place that we are not welcome, and that's the navigation of our humanity. And that is why I have such a hard time with, politics of it all.
Yeah.
And so I want to talk more about what you are doing now and working with that bridging of communities
Yes.
and all. So tell us, how would you describe the marginalized communities that you work with in Australia and how you're supporting them?
Certainly. So I work with, I would say, four main stakeholders. I work with culturally and linguistic diverse people. I work with First Nations people, so Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders. And I work with people with a disability and people from a lower economic demographic. And the way actually I'm able to target them is through what we call community legal centers. So these are people who may not be able to afford legal representation, so they go to these places. So those are the four people. So people from low socioeconomic demographic, cultural, linguistic, diverse, First Nations, and people with a disability. Yeah. So what I'm doing is within the space of the public service, I basically make them aware of the services we offer and the way they can use it. So currently I'm working for a prominent ombudsman in Melbourne.
So tell us, tell us about your government structure. So the ombudsman is the equivalent of?
The ombudsman is basically an independent public official, basically, who has the ability to, I guess, scrutinize the actions of other public sectors. Yeah. And
okay. So I'm familiar with ombudsman services. It's really about like, how do we help to advocate and hold accountable?
Exactly. So that's exactly, currently, I mean, my former job was different, but currently what I do is I work for the Victorian Ombudsman. And basically, if anyone has a complaint about the public sector, it could range from housing, it could range from health, education, transportation, that's marriage. They come to us and basically we will investigate for them.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's what we do. And we'll try and assist them basically rectify whatever issues they have with this public sector. And the reason why these four stakeholders, these demographics are very, very important. These are people who are not seen. Yeah, people who are not seen and people who do not have the voice or the ability to empower themselves to say, hey, I have this issue. And often, I mean, if you take someone who's a refugee who's come to Australia, often they do not know they can complain. They've lived in a place where
exactly. That's what I was thinking. It's like they just don't have that as a practice from where they're from.
No.
Yeah.
So my job is really to educate them and say, it's okay, you can do this. And the way I do it often is I do a lot of outreach. So I will go with two of my complaints officers. And often I love to actually leave the metro area and go into the regional areas. Now, when I talk about regional Australia, it's very, very difficult to paint a picture for you, but just imagine somewhere with just nothing.
Yeah.
In the middle of just nothing for miles.
And then something.
Yes. So for example, my favorite thing is actually just to get on the road, do a bit of a road show, go there and, educate them, say, this is who we are, and also have what we call a complaints clinic. So they'll come to us and basically with any issues they have, we'll take down details and then we will basically investigate for them. Yeah. So that's my job. Prior to that, also, I was working for the Western Australian Electoral Commission. And with that, it was actually encouraging certain demographics. Again, very, very similar to demographics, cultural, linguistic, diverse, First Nations people, the youth, to basically participate in the democratic process. Yeah. And basically trying to educate them about the importance of participating in the democratic process. Australia is unusual because you have to vote, actually.
Yeah. That's what I was gonna say. Like, it's a whole. Okay. Continue.
No. You have to vote, and if you do not vote, you get fined. And there's a whole discussion on it. But having worked, in that field and actually watching what's happening in the rest of the world, and if I dare say, the erosion of democracy, I think it's very, very important. It is very, very important to encourage people to vote at this time because your vote does count. And I think that, let's just say, the state of the world could have been different if certain people went out to vote. If yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah, and if people did
Absolutely.
not feel apathetic or felt their vote didn't count. Yeah.
I feel Australia seems like a whole nother world, the land down under. And it really does in terms of the progressive mindset of the institutions, so to speak, right? And not to say that there aren't the issues, because there are, like, there's still marginalized communities.
Yeah.
There still are those struggles for land, resources, that type of thing.
Same.
But to the extent that the basic recognition that your citizenship relies on your ability to speak
Yes.
and have a voice,
Yes.
that's not world changing, but it is.
It is.
It is. It's
It is. Yeah. And that's why sometimes I do feel physically sick watching the news. I mean, I'm trying not to say too much, but I really do. It's concerning. It's concerning watching the erosion of democracy. It really is.
one funny thing that you said when you were saying you probably couldn't imagine. Remember we talked about dreams.
Uh-huh.
I had a recurring dream as a child.
Yeah.
And I was in Australia in one of those vast, I never knew, I kind of got a sense that it was, but I had this recurring dream. I was in Australia, big satellite dish. It was just me and some small, structure, but a big satellite dish. So I can relate. Yeah.
Actually, there's a film called The Dish. And actually, it's a satellite disc. It's sort of one of the main features. It's an Australian film, actually. You should check it out. Yeah.
Okay, I will definitely. Because I always wondered, why do I keep having this dream? Like, it was just such a mystery to me.
Yeah. Check it out.
So, Nana, how do you hack your mindset? What do you do to flip the switch?
Yeah.
When the time comes?
Actually, there are three things, but what I do is meditation is really good for you. So I do a meditation called Yoga Nidra.
Okay, yeah, love it.
Which is Nidra means sleep. So it's basically sleeping with the yogis. It's a beautiful sleep. I'm not very flexible, so I cannot sit in that lotus position and meditate. So it's just a meditation where you just lie in bed. And it's basically almost like a body scan, and you just relax in all parts of your body. And then you have a sankalpa, which is your intention. And you repeat it 3 times. And I guess you just put that out to the universe. So I do that. I basically do a guided meditation, 20 minutes meditation. I try and do it in the morning, and I try and do it after work when you're very, very stressed. And research shows actually that meditation is very, very good for you, for the brain. So that's one thing I do. I also journal. I journal a lot, every day, really. It doesn't have to be anything deep.
So are you a pen and paper journaler, or are you on your phone journaler?
Pen and paper.
Yeah.
Pen and paper. So I'll write down my thoughts, and then my journal is also my gratitude diary. So after that I'll just put a little gratitude, and then I'll just hit 5 things I'm grateful for.
Okay.
So that's really good. And I do love yoga as well. Yeah, even though I'm not that flexible. I just
I do too.
You do, yeah. Like nothing beats a lunchtime yoga class. Actually, just you run into the gym quickly at lunchtime. Yeah, at a gym or a yoga studio.
Yeah, that makes sense. That would really change and because I work for myself at home, I do it at different times.
Yes.
And to your point, like at work, then do it. It changes.
It does.
Yeah.
It does. Yeah. And it just beats that 3 p.m. blues where you just
and a low.
that low.
Yeah.
You're looking for sugar. I do love that. So those would be the 3 things. But certainly meditation and journaling. It's the way forward.
Okay. Awesome. So speaking of ways forward, where do you see yourself? Like, what's new and next in the next 5 years? What's that looking like for you?
Well, look, I just moved to Melbourne, but it's interesting we should be doing this because I'm inspired by you. And actually, Charlie, who owns this place, he was an accountant in the UK and just woke up one day and thought, I'm going to come and give Ghana a go. That's something I am exploring very, very, very at the moment. I'm trying to explore. I'm looking for a way where I can come back, basically, and perhaps live partially here, but still have my Australian connection, but also come here and make an impact. Really bring something here. I think sometimes it's easy for us Africans to go somewhere else and give our talent, give our service, and forget about the motherland. The Indian symbols? One of the things I love about the Indian symbols is Sankofa, the bird looking back. Yeah. And it's to go back and get, really. And I'm feeling a Sankofa here. I feel like, it would be great to come back to Africa and just great to be with my people. I think that unless you've lived abroad, you do not really understand how great it is to come back to a place where
You're part of
you're
everyone.
part of it. Yeah, yeah. And I'll share a story. It isn't perhaps the most pleasant story, but it's been something which has actually made me really think deeper about coming back. In Australia, I mean, it's a lovely and beautiful place to live, but just once a year or once in a blue moon, you'll be walking down the street and someone will shout the N-word out of a car. And it's just very frightening. It really shakes you because it's an assault. It's an assault, but you've not been physically hit. And in the last year, I was walking and it happened. And it was actually worse because it was someone who I guess society would expect to not succumb to that. It was someone who was driving a Mercedes convertible, sort of just shouted that out to me. And I was just shaking. And I just thought, as I get closer to my mid-century, I actually do not want to experience that. I actually want to be in a place where actually I'm respected, you know? And so that has been one of the drives where, yeah, that was one of the last drives where I thought, actually, I'd like to come back home and just be with my people.
It's so funny you say that because I was just, that was one of the questions I asked. Like, what is the community like? People of color, of Ghanaians, in the cities that you've lived in Melbourne specifically.
Yeah. You know what? When I arrived in Australia 17 years ago, I was a rarity. Yeah. People would ask you questions and I had more hair than this. I'm not bald. I'm just shaving my hair. But I had to my mum's. I had this big fro, and all she wanted was for me to have a haircut. But people would touch your hair without permission. Yeah. So all those kind of things, and they'll look at you. Nowadays, there's more of an African community in Australia, especially a Sudanese and South Sudanese community. Yeah, so we're more seen. We're more, they're more Africans, but still, I mean, there are challenges sometimes being someone of African descent in Australia. Well, anywhere actually, apart from Africa,
exactly.
You face challenges. Yeah. So that would be my answer.
Experience.
Yeah, my experience. Yeah.
Okay, so let's flip the switch. There's some joyful things that you probably do. So when you're not working
yes.
or meditating,
yes,
we like to know, who is Nana?
Yes.
Is he a reader? Is he a watcher? Or is he a listener? What are some of your favorite reads, watches, or listens? Or what else do you do when you're off the clock?
Wow, yes. I love that question. I think when I'm not working, when I have the me time, sometimes I exist in another universe. So one of my favorite things to do is finish work, pour a glass of red. And for some reason, I just like to listen to the headphones.
Yeah, because you get the rounder sound, yeah.
And I listen to music, but it could be any kind of music. Often it could be very old school music, something which is nostalgic, or you could explore one artist and just move to another.
So what's your old school? Because
What is my old school? Oh, wow. Let me just have a quick think about what I've been listening to. It really, really depends. Like yesterday, actually, I woke up and I thought, Whitney Houston just came into my mind. So I watched different renditions of the How Will I Know then on YouTube. And then I actually watched a lot of people, which surprised me. I thought they were faking it, who were listening to her for the first time on YouTube.
Oh, right. That's like a thing.
Yeah. Like the reaction. And I thought, you must be faking it. Everyone knows who this legend is. But it could be anything. Sometimes it's the good old, R&B. I grew up in a household where Motown was everything. So I do listen to a lot of the Al Greens, James Browns, the Jackson's Fives. Yeah, I listen to a lot of that as well. But that's my favorite thing, really. Nice. Glass of red, listening to music. And just, being my own DJ. Yeah.
Selecta.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Cool. So, Nana, this has been wonderful. I thank you so much for making time. And I'm eyes open on another part of the world. We love it. So before we say bye for now, do you have any last thoughts that you'd like to share with our listeners?
Well, look, I don't know where your listeners are.
They're literally all over
the world.
I have over 100 countries.
Wow.
Where my metrics show me. So yeah.
Well, I think the part thought I'd like to leave them is actually how beautiful the world is. the world is a beautiful place. I always say, a lot of people talk about what they'll do if they won the lottery. And I just say, I'll travel. That's all I'll do.
Right?
Yes.
Right.
So
See all the beautiful places.
all the beautiful places. So what I will say is, as someone who's actually a global citizen, is if you can, just travel and see more of the world. Yeah, it's a fascinating place to be. It's nighttime in Australia as we speak. Oh, sorry, daytime. I beg your pardon.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating to have a FaceTime call with someone where you're just in daytime and they're at night. It's fascinating to see culture, to see different plants, to see different animals. People still ask me, what do kangaroos look like?
Right. Actually,
but it's
they can really only survive well.
Yeah. In Australia, yeah. My little niece, she's obsessed with it. She's always asking her mom to Google kangaroos for her. So, but yeah, I'll just say to your listeners, the world is a beautiful place. And if you can travel and see more of it, please do.
Yeah.
Please do.
Those are great parting words. Great parting words. All right, Glocal citizens, this has been another episode of the podcast. You can catch us Tuesdays with new episodes at glocalcitizenspod.com or wherever you get your podcast. Please do like, share, subscribe, leave us a review, check out the show notes. They'll be very rich. And until next time, bye for now.